Hello and welcome to SoftPeak. Today we're going to speak about content management, mostly inside Microsoft 365, but also other concepts like wiki files and Markdown structures and stuff like that. So it's about documents and document management. So starting off here, we will see in our starting page of Microsoft 365, we have this office.com page where we can see all of my various content types that I've been working with. I can see all of my content. I can click this one and I can see all of my content that I have inside Microsoft 365. As we can see here on the left-hand side, we can see I have a plus sign here which I can create content. So I can create various types of content inside Microsoft 365. For example, I can create documents, I can create presentations, workbooks, forms, quizzes, pages, notebooks, lists, and so much more various content types that I can produce. And there's a bunch of templates as well that I can use. For example, in PowerPoint, I can use various templates for presentations. And for example, I can create calendars, etc. So depending on what type of content I want to create for my organization, that it may be different from each organization what type of content I have, but I also have the concept of my content. So I can look at my content. That's me as an individual within an organization. In this case, I'm Henrik inside SoftPeak. So I also have my content in here. So from my perspective, I'm interested in certain pieces of the content, not all of the content within the organization. More the content I'm interested in is relating to the reason why I'm inside the organization. So it's very different. And of course, I can upload the content, already existing content, to various cloud sources. So I can have it both locally and in the cloud. So I can see in my cloud files, I have various places where I can store it. Most of the places would probably be SharePoint, various SharePoint files, but I can also have local files that I have like synchronized into my own kind of structure. So the way that this works is that we have the concept of OneDrive. We have an application. If I click on the app launcher up here, we can see that I have an application called OneDrive. And I can click on the OneDrive and I go into the OneDrive settings and I can see I can have my files and share my files with the various users. And OneDrive, on a technical side and the architecture side of OneDrive, it's also the same thing as SharePoint. So it's sharing the settings. So OneDrive, for the user's perspective, is where they keep their local files, their personal shared folders and the work that the files and the content that they are working on from their perspective. But from an administration perspective, I click on admin here and I can go into the admin section and I can show all various admin centers like this. I don't have a specific one for OneDrive. So we can see here SharePoint and OneDrive is sharing the same admin center portal. So I can go into the SharePoint admin center. And I can see here if I click on the settings, I can see shared settings. Some of the settings here is actually connected to SharePoint, and other ones is connected to OneDrive. So it's sharing the possibilities of having different settings depending on if it's SharePoint or if it's OneDrive. So most of the things in SharePoint is considered to be organizational wide or shared with a team or have that kind of purpose, of more collaborative purpose. OneDrive is more considered to be my files and my stuff. And sometimes I need to share just this specific content piece or this specific file externally to other organizations or something like that. Maybe I want to have a more collaborative environment and maybe I want to have even more stuff. Then it's maybe SharePoint related. So if I click on policies here and I can see the sharing possibilities, we can have these two sliders here. I can see if I want to be, how permissive I want to be, how much I want to do the users of my content to be able to share externally. So I can drag this one down for SharePoint. I can't have OneDrive higher than SharePoint. So if I try to drag the OneDrive higher than SharePoint, it doesn't allow me to do that. So I need to have SharePoint higher, and I can have OneDrive lower than SharePoint. So for some organizations, this may be an issue, and there is probably ways around this. If you really want to hack into it, you can probably find a way to work around this as well. Also, what you can do is you can have a look at these content services. So SharePoint has the possibility to attach certain things to taxonomies and to have a very common like metadata description that can describe the various content pieces that you might have, like a Word document or a PowerPoint or whatever. It can have meta tags attached to it, so it can be a part of any given taxonomy. So inside SharePoint, there's a kind of a global for the entire tenant taxonomy structure that you can use. So you can tag it up with various information pieces. So it can describe like meta description. For example, a document might need to be assigned to a certain department or a certain purpose or stuff like that. So you can actually find it more easily. It can be identified more easily. It can also be grouped in various content types. So we can define it as the various content types. So all of those metadata structures can have various content information pieces like tags, information, metadata structures, and definitions that only apply to that kind of information piece. For example, a document can be whatever type of structure inside here. Jumping back now to my contents here again, I can go back to my home site here. I can see my content. I created one content type called the dashboard, and that's what I created yesterday. It's a SharePoint content type. So a page in SharePoint can also be a similar structure as a document or a file. So I can also click on this create one. I can see if I want to create a Word document. It creates a Word document, but it creates a Word document inside my OneDrive. So I can see that it's creating the Word document inside my OneDrive. So I can just type hello here, and I can just see here. It's creating it inside my documents folder. So I can go here and I can see it's creating this document inside my OneDrive. So it's jumped into my OneDrive. So I can see this document here. If I open up this document, it will open up the document inside the web experience of Word. So Word and some other applications as well, they have this web interface that you can use for this. So inside this document, I can do a bunch of things on the web, but I can also open it up inside. If I want to click on edit here, I can open it up in the desktop experience as well. So if I open it up in the desktop experience, it will open up my Word experience. So I'll just open it up here. And now I have the Word experience. Now I have this experience where I have this Word experience, and I can have this web experience. So I can have them side by side, so I can see. I can both work in a document on the web, but I can also work with the desktop. There's a couple of differences in the way that how we can work with the documents. If I have the web version, it's a bit different. The options, what's supported, the features we have inside the various ones. So we just close this one down and open this one in the full screen here. So what I can do, if I close a lot of windows here, so I will just clean it up a little bit. So we go back to my file here. I can see there is also this kind of concept of what I have, what type of applications I have, what type of apps I have inside my licensed versions. So now I have a business standard license. So I see a couple of things. I see most of the Office applications is there, like Word, for example, that help me write and share, make real-time edits. I have Excel as well inside here. So inside Microsoft Excel, I can do budget planning and calculations, and I have in PowerPoint, I can make presentations, and I have the OneDrive concept. And OneDrive also has a really neat thing as well. So if I go into the file explorer here, I see this kind of OneDrive icon as well. So I can see that I have my document already in my desktop experience. So I have the document here given me from this synchronization feature from OneDrive, and I can see this synchronization file here. So I have the same icon here. It's actually using this to sync the document I just created from there. So I can add various things here. So I can use this to sync from various sources. So I have just OneDrive synced right now, but I can use the same experience for even for SharePoint content. So closing this one down, again, I will just show you a little bit more around what we can do here. So inside Microsoft Teams, we have this Meet, Chat and Share. We can also have a look at that, how the synchronization works if I have it inside Microsoft Teams. But there's a bunch of more applications and content that we can use inside here, and it's divided into various interesting categories. We have this productivity category. I can even see more applications and tooling that's available to me to be able to be more productive. For example, I can use Microsoft Forms, and I can have calendars, and I can create various reports, and a ton more things that I actually can use to create various content. There's also this concept of utilities and education, communication, content management, where I can use a whiteboard experience and I can work with lists. I can even have project management, like a project and planner, stuff like that. I have the developer tools to be able to create applications. And we have this employee experience. If I have a bigger license, if I have even more applications, it will show even more stuff. So I have a pretty basic license for this. So if I look at Microsoft Teams, it will open up Microsoft Teams inside here. Yeah, I will do this eventually. So inside Microsoft Teams, we have both this kind of web experience. So we can use Microsoft Teams inside the web, and we see this Viva connection icon here that we have added in the desktop experience. In the previous section here, I open up this web experience with Viva connections. So I can have the internet experience inside here, and I had added this dashboard. I have this concept of Microsoft Teams as well, so I can open it up here. And I will close this one and open up the desktop version instead. So I will have this Teams version here. See here I can have inside Teams, I have a channel, the Teams channel, and I can have in this channel, I can have the concept of files, but I also have this concept of notes. So I can create, for example, a OneNote experience. So I can type something in here, hello, and I can start typing inside a OneNote file. So whatever I type here, I can open up this one in the desktop as well. So it will open up and I have two different options here. Take the first one, maybe just once. So I will open up this experience as well. So we can see how it looks when I open it up in a desktop application. So it's the same concept as in Word. It's a bit different, the amount of tooling I have in comparison to the web experience. So I can do the same things. I can type even more. So this is one way of adding like notes and concepts. So that's included and connected into the Microsoft Teams experience, which is using a group to bind all this all together. Inside that group, we also have a dedicated SharePoint site. So if I, for example, create a new here, I can see that I have various content types that I can add. So for example, if I create an Excel file in this scenario, so I just do this 1, 2, 3 Excel. Pretty weird name, but let's do it like ABC, like that. And we have it like 1, 2, 3 here. That's all I have inside this. And I can, of course, insert this into a table. I guess that's always a good practice to have a table. So this is what I've created now. And if I can just close this one, like you see now, I'm working inside Microsoft Teams with Excel. I can, of course, open it and edit it inside the desktop experience as well, if I wanted to. But let's close this. Now I have a file here inside here, I can have this option of hitting this synchronization feature. It will sync the documents and from that in the general channel. I personally prefer to open it up in SharePoint, and then I can select, instead of just syncing the general channel, I prefer to go one step up and add and sync from the root of this folder. The reason for that is that if I create another channel inside here, if I create another channel inside Microsoft Teams, so let's do a channel here and just call it my ABC channel, and I just add the channel here. This channel will be a different folder in SharePoint. So I have this file, and I create a file, another file here. Let's create the PowerPoint this time and call it ABC PowerPoint. That's the PowerPoint I have. So I can open up the ABC inside here as well. So I can use the ABC, just a weird name, and I have the same option of, well, let's open it up in the desktop, even for this one. So now I have ABC inside one channel, and I have this Excel file inside another channel. If I go back to my SharePoint here and I just refresh here, you will see that I have two folders from the root. If I were to sync just the general folder, I'll only see the Excel file. But if I sync from the documents folder instead, it will give me the possibilities to have both of them. So when I click this sync, it will actually start up the OneDrive synchronization feature. So it will open up the OneDrive synchronization client, the one we had down here. It will sync this folder. So now going back to this small synchronization application, we can see that it's already synced a couple of files from various locations. So now if I go back into the settings here, I now see in my account, I also have synchronized both my OneDrive, but also my documents folder. So if I open up my Explorer here, I now see another icon down here with the kind of office building icon. So inside my Explorer, now I have both the OneDrive, but I also have this synchronized folder of my organizational files. So I have inside here, I have both the channel from ABC, where I have my PowerPoint, and I have the desktop experience from Excel as well. So if I open up this one from inside the Explorer, so I open up the Excel one again, it will open up the default into my Excel experience. So let's say I want to create another Excel experience here. I can do it immediately from inside Explorer like this, just standard Windows Explorer. So I just create a new, and maybe I want to create a new Excel file, and I will start with 456, and I just open it up like that. Just rename it again. So we'll use this rename feature here, and 456, and we press enter. So now I create this file. I will open up this file and I will add just 456. That's the one thing I will do. And I will just close it for now. So we will see that it's changing the icon. You saw there briefly that it's synchronizing. So inside the OneDrive synchronization feature, it's synced this up to my general folder. So I can see in my general folder now that I have this synchronized file. So if I go back into Teams, I can see the file. If I go back into SharePoint to my general folder, I see it here as well. And I can even see versions inside SharePoint, so I can see what's happening. So it's storing the various versions. So it's making sure that I can revisit the prior version, and I can restore a prior version of any file in SharePoint. So what you can do as well, that's pretty good to do when you think about an organization. We want to remember what's inside this file. And when I'm working with it, of course, I remember what it was. But a year down the line, or maybe some other users want to understand what this file is all about, it's always good to add metadata structures to this. And you can do that by hitting add column here. So you can add a metadata structure that can describe what's inside the content of this file. So you can use the centrally placed taxonomy. In this view, it's called manage metadata. So you can select this, manage metadata, and I can add a column and call it just taxonomy, for example. And I can add this, and I can select from a given taxonomy. Maybe I pick the people one. I see the department jobs, and that's what I want to allow for, to be able to have the department, for example. I don't have too many departments yet, so I don't think you can select anything, but I can go into the taxonomy and add more departments down the line. So we have this, maybe we call it departments instead, so we can assign this what department is working with this. So if I press save now, it's connected to the taxonomy. Now I can see, if I click this one, I can see in the information tab here, I can have the taxonomy for the departments. I don't think I have any tags yet, so I just have, it's all blank. So what I can do is I can add more stuff to this. There's a couple of ways to add the metadata to the departments here. So I can go into my site settings here, and I can find in my site settings, I can find this block under site administration called term store management. So it's called term store. One place it's called manage metadata, in other places it's called term store, and then it's also called taxonomy in other places. So you can see in the taxonomy, we have this global taxonomy. I don't have, at the moment, I don't have edit rights, because we need to assign an administrator to this department. So what I can do, I can add stuff in here. In order for me to add, I need to have an owner for this. So maybe I can add a term set owner. So let's just jump in here as an administrator into the SharePoint Admin Center. In order for us to add to the taxonomy, I want to add myself as an administrator to the taxonomy. I go into the content service here under the SharePoint Admin Center. And I go to the term store. And in the root here, I can add myself as an admin. So I just find myself. There's only one person in this entire tenant, so that should be all fine. It's all green. Now I can see other people here. I should be able to edit this one as well. So maybe I will add myself as an administrator here as well. I can see him here, so should be all fine. Let's try again. See if I can add myself. Just press save. I think this pencil should disappear eventually. So I can add a term here. So maybe I want to have an HR department. Maybe I want to have, I don't know, maybe a sales department. And maybe I want to have a financial, fintech, let's call them, because it's pretty cool here at SoftPeak. And maybe I want to have an IT department, IT department. And we call that digital instead of IT. And what we can do in the taxonomy, we can also have like synonyms to this as well. So I can, if someone tries to type in IT, they will see digital instead of IT. So we can do that by pressing edit here. So maybe we want to have, if someone's tried to type IT or it, or just information like that. Maybe they want to type in information. It will all lead to digital. So we will press this one, and we have synonyms for this. So now if I go back to my site here, I can go another way here. So I can go back in here, and I can see inside ABC here. So under my files, I now see the department. If I click this one and I click the information symbol here, now I see inside teams, and now I have this add tag, and now I should be able to see my various departments. So I can select a department for this specific document. I want it to be a part of maybe several different departments, or I can just, if I just start typing here and say I want to type in IT, it gives me the digital option, and I just add this. Now this specific file is tied to this 123 Excel file is now tied to my department. And there is ways, of course, to automate this depending on what's inside the content and what content type it is, so forth. So this is just a brief overview on how we can do this and how we can showcase a pretty basic scenario on how we can work with the various content. So going back into the apps section here, we can see that there is tons of different files and folders that we can work out of. I think working with this is all good and dandy, but for many scenarios and many organizations have different content types that not really in the box of Microsoft 365. For example, maybe working with Google Docs, and you may be working with Atlassian tools like Jira and Confluence and stuff like that. And I personally really like the way that the wiki works. So I really like the Markdown structure, and especially wikis, proper wikis. Inside Microsoft Teams, the previously were, instead of notes, there was some kind of really basic wiki versions. But in the developer space, most of the developer documentations needs to be aligned with the code. So in many scenarios, they want to use pure text files or pure Markdown files that go along with each versioning of the code. So I really like the way that Markdown works. A little bit of an overview of Markdown. Just before that, we can have a look at the content. Now we can see all of the files created, and I can see my home here as well. So we can go to this Markdown guide, which is a really good website, an open source reference guide that we can have the basic understanding on what Markdown is. So the basic structure here for Markdown is that we can have here, for example, if you look at this, we see the basic. So we can have for a heading, we can have this hashtag symbol for H1, which means that it's a header file. And if we want to have the text bold, we can have the 2 stars on it. If we want to have it italic, we can use a 1 star. If we have a block quote, and we can have an ordered list. So it's pretty basic in terms of syntax that we can use to be able to create a formatted way. I think the main benefit is to have it as a pure text file, because it's consistent regardless of what applications we use in order to open up this file. It's going to work maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So when it comes to retention and to be able to keep records for a really long time, records management, it's really good to have this in a pure text file rather than in a specific like a proprietary format, because you're not sure how that's going to look, especially when it comes to cloud services. Maybe 20 years from now, who knows what we will open up the files with, but most likely it will be supporting the basic syntax of Markdown. So I just created a new file here called start.md. By default in Windows, it's not showing you the file, and it's not allowing you to see the .md file ending, because it's a pure text file. So if I go with new and I just create a text file, it will be a txt file. But I can go into the options here, and maybe I can find the view, and I can maybe unselect this one, hide extensions for node file type. I really like to see the file ending. Now I can see it's called md.txt. If I remove this and just call it md, now Microsoft is not really, it's knowing that it's a Markdown source file. So default in Windows, if I open up this one, it will open up in Visual Studio Code, which is awesome. And here I can start to type. So for example, use this, and I can call it hello. You see that it's keeping the syntax highlight for this. Just like in the previous section here, we can also add extensions to be able to show how this actually looks inside the browser. So let's just see if we have something cool here. We have this Markdown lit, which is limiting styling, but we can search also for Markdown, see what we have here. If we get some really cool, maybe we can take this one. Auto preview sounds good. So we just install this one. So we trust this inside our files here, and we will now be able to see this inside my code. So I should only be able to see hello. So let's maybe do some stars here and call it bold. We see that it's highlighting this, and we can have a hello again like this in pure text. So what I can do now is I can go to this command palette, and I can search for Markdown, and let's maybe say open preview on the side, and we can see in the side panel that it's rendering out in a really neat way. And I can take this entire code here and just copy paste it, and we can save this Markdown file. I can open up inside my SharePoint file here. I can see here that this file now is here inside SharePoint. So I can click this MD file. doesn't recognize it. SharePoint doesn't really understand what this is. So I can open up in a text editor, and I can see the text here as well. But I can also, inside SharePoint here, I can open up inside SharePoint. I have this SoftPeak website as well. I can, in this site, maybe I will do it in the starting page instead. I can have a section here inside my starting page. I can add a new section like this, and inside here I can use the web part, the Markdown web part. So I can search for it, Markdown. I can see inside SharePoint here, I can add this text into SharePoint like that. And I can republish it, and SharePoint is gonna render it inside the page. This, of course, is a big possibility and a big benefit for anyone working with pure text, because I can just go in here and I can copy this text again from here, and I can work out of it and paste it into whatever, like GitHub repos or any supporting tool that supports Markdown. Since it's pure text, it's also easy to transfer and move around and to do changes with it as well. But there is really fancy applications out there that really work with Markdown in a really, really nice way. I really like to highlight this application called Obsidian.md Markdown. It's a really nice application. It's supporting several different platforms, and you can download it and you can use it. I think the pricing is, if you want to use it inside your commercial use for your business, then of course you should pay. But otherwise, if you want to use it just for personal use, you can use the free version for this. So I just installed Obsidian here, and I get the option of creating a vault. A vault is like a collection of various MD files or Markdown files. So hitting this create button here, I can have the possibility to create a vault name. So let's call it just SoftPeak like that. And I can choose a location where I want to store this. And of course, I want to be smart about it. So maybe I want to store it inside my my OneDrive, because then it's syncing as well to the cloud. But maybe I will create a folder here for it. So I will create a new folder and call it MD files or something like that, and I will keep it inside here. So I will just select this folder, so I'll store it inside here. So if I press the create button now, I have a new tab, a new folder for this. So I can create a new file just like that, and I call it my first file like this. I can just start typing here inside it, and it will be supporting the Markdown option. Of course, I can use this and I can do hello. It's keeping that, and if I want to have it bold, I can do that as well, bold, like that. And I can also copy the text I had from the previous one like that. So I can just copy paste in here, and it looks really, really nice. So if I jump now into my documents folder, into the MD folder I just created for Obsidian, I can open up this SoftPeak vault. So I can see inside the vault I have this MD files, and I also have this meta description of that Obsidian uses to be able to work with this. And I won't touch that. Typically, when you see a dot before something, you don't really want to touch that, because that's kind of like meta instructions for any file. So I can open up this MD file. Now, again, I can trust this one. I can see that it's pure Markdown, but I can use different applications to type and do changes here. So I can do change one here, for example. I can open up this one again here. I can see that I have the change one here inside Visual Studio Code. I can do change two from VS Code like that. I can just open up Obsidian, and I can refresh this file. It should reflect to this one as well. So like that, I can see the changes from VS Code. So I can work in multiple locations, because it's just pure text files. So it's just a standard text file. I can use whatever type of editor I want to use. I can even use Notepad if I wanted to, but that's kind of harsh tool to use, because you can't really see what you're doing. Obsidian has a bunch of other cool features as well into it. One of the cooler things I really like with the Obsidian is this graph view that I can have a representation of all my files. It doesn't make much sense when I only have one file like this, but if I go back to my first file and I want to add something here, I can just go down here and I can hit this brackets, 2 brackets, and I can do a second file like this. And this really proves one of the key things when working with wikis and Markdown in general. You can have this kind of void, this kind of emptiness. So you can have a file that's not really created yet. So you can have a space for it. So I can maybe do a third one, third file like that. And I can see if I create this file, if I click on this file now, the second file, I have created a second file. So this is the number 2, like that. So I can do whatever I want basically when it comes to Markdown. But the cool thing comes when I have use this graph thing. I can see that I have if I zoom in a little bit, we see this first file. It has a link to the second file that exists. It's kind of like highlight, and I can move it around. And I have this third file. It has a different, it's more shaded. It doesn't exist yet. So it can understand if I have many links and I do this kind of a really big network, mesh network of various files that describe in various pieces of my documentation or my structure, it can understand this in a really nice way, which I can't really understand if I'm looking at the pure file system. I don't know what's not there. If I don't know what's not there, for example, inside here I can only see the first and the second file, but inside Obsidian I can also have this space of additional stuff, and I can build on top of stuff. I can also use, if I go back into here, I can also use a tagging system to this as well. For example, I can use this on the side here. I can just search for tag like that. So I can just add a tag like that. It will add me a tag, and I can call it department or something like that. So that's just, it's creating various tags. If I now go back to this graph viewer, I can add and show the tags as well. So I can have all the files that's included that has this department tag. I can understand if I have many hundreds of files, I can understand and I can group them together in various tag systems. Of course, in a real scenario, I wouldn't have this kind of bad spelling and all of this. This is just to showcase stuff. So from here, from Markdown, I really recommend that you dive deep into this, because it is really, really helpful to work with Markdown files and structures. It's an awesome way of creating content. But there's so much more also in the Microsoft ecosystem. So let's switch gear a little bit and move into the adoption side of this. In Microsoft ecosystem, there's a bunch of different toolings that you can use to enhance the content management of and improve the way that you work with content. One of them being Microsoft Syntax. Syntax is a really cool AI-driven tooling, so you can understand with something they call the content AI, so you can enhance content management that fits into the modern era of AI. So it can understand various document structures, and it can understand how certain things fit together. So it can add additional intelligence and add metadata structures, and it can add components and understand patterns of things. So that's one really cool thing to look into. But there's other things as well when it comes to Microsoft 365 Copilot. It can extend your experiences and really connect the users. So from one user to another, it can understand, and it can share content in a really new, really, really nice way. So in a common scenario, we will probably take a deep dive into the AI functionalities and how to work with language models and structured like that. But for now, it's also good to understand that there is something called Microsoft Search. In Microsoft Search, it's using the graph, the kind of a big API that's kind of empowering everything. So in this kind of big structure, structure. We can search and have findability. So one way to structure, to think about this, that you want to be able to have a really good structure from the start, basically. So you have a good information architecture with good metadata descriptions that can actually align so people can find more stuff and connect with the information that we have. So there's other stuff as well when it comes to the Viva applications as well, that there's a bunch of stuff in Viva that can also help with the connecting users with the content in a far better way. For example, in Viva Topics, it's a really nice application to be able to understand what type of content is there and how to connect it with certain users and users' needs. Well, I've been rambling on here for quite some time already, so I think I will conclude this session for today about content and how to work with the various file types and document structures and metadata and all of this kind of markdown things. So thank you so much if you stuck with me to the end here. This is a part of a series of YouTube videos called SoftPeak. And the purpose of this is to help you work smarter. So it's a kind of a fictive or kind of a scenario when I want to describe a startup that we want to use more digital tooling, smart digital tooling, and use it more efficiently. And also using the power of digital intelligences, artificial intelligences in order to do things more smart. And also we want to democratize the way that we do this. So share the experiences we have around this SoftPeak experience. So if you do like this content, then hit that like button and maybe subscribe to the channel, the typical things. But you can also hit this newsletter button here on softpeak.com and sign up to the coming email newsletter that we kind of like plan to distribute at some point. So with that, I thank you again for listening in. Until next time, stay safe.